the Coalesce podcast. My name's Grant,
And I'm Meg.
and today we're going to look at how do you, like, if we're doing auto saves and bulk saves and all that, how do we show the user, and even loads, how do we show the user that something's happening? And so they get some kind of a sense that there's something going on in the background. So let's go ahead and do that. There's a thing called the C loader, and then we're also just going to use that in some of the built-in Beautify buttons as well. So you can kind of spin the button there on the save button as well.
Yeah, so let's start out with the C loader. So you'll notice when I refresh this page, it's pretty quick actually, but if we were on a slower network connection, it would take a second to show the content of the page since this is mostly being loaded from the back end. So it'd be nice to be able to wrap all the stuff that's coming from the back end in some kind of loading status. So first of all, I think it's important to think about what you want to wrap in that loading status. So I don't think I'd want to wrap this because I think as soon as the page shows, I'd want to show the title of the page. But everything past there should probably be hidden until the page loads correctly. So like my save button, for example, I don't think I want to show that until the rest of this stuff loads up, even though it's not relying on the back end to load. And then all this stuff in the middle is kind of reliant on the back end for loading. So to do that, I would wrap my code in something called a C loader status. And this takes in quite a number of options. So I'd recommend looking at the docs for specific use cases. But for this case, if we want to show no content initially, you do no initial content. And what that means, you don't have to actually pass true there like that. And I'm gonna end this really quick so that Copilot doesn't suggest anything too crazy because it's jumping my code around a lot. Okay, so what this means is when you first load the page, it won't show any of this initial content. So it won't show the save button, for example. If you refresh the question on the page without hard reloading the page, it will show the save button while it's refreshing all that content, and it will keep this content here, but you'll see a bar kind of loading. I don't know if I'm explaining this well. Maybe Grant, you should ask some clarifying questions if the visuals aren't there.
Get it going so people can see
let's
what it looks
get
like.
It going.
So I think that'll help. Now we have to specify basically what is the thing or what are the things that we want to wait for.
Yeah, so loaders is actually going to take in an array. So you can wait for multiple things. You can wait for saving, you can wait for loading. Let's just do loading right now. So question dot load. And notice I'm not invoking this here. You'll get lots of issues if you try and invoke that. I'm just referencing it. So now when I refresh the page, if you were a very observant viewer, you could see it.
Just barely.
So when you're testing stuff like this on a fast computer, a great way to see what that loader bar looks like is if you head over to your Inspect Network tab. Under throttling, you can kind of slow this down. Let's try like 4G, slow 4G right now. When we refresh that, you can see it takes a little longer, and there's the load bar for just a little longer. If you really wanted to see it, you could go to 3G. But let's turn that off. So that's a good way to kind of see what your page would look like on slower performances.
Right. Okay. So if you were actually loading multiple things, or saving multiple things, whatever you have to do, you could just put commas in there and just put a list of all the loaders. And the tricky thing here is that $load it can be called as a method, but it also has information on it that tells about whether or not this particular thing is loading. So it's a nice way to just be able to wrap a whole page in a thing. So you kind of limit the interaction on the page at the time when everything's loaded until everything gets loaded. Because if you have complicated pages, I mean, you may actually load up several different view models in order to make the page really perform the way that you want it to.
Yeah, and the benefit there is that if you have a couple things loading and you don't want content to just start popping on the screen randomly as things load, you want it all to come on the screen together. Right. That's what this no initial content will help you with. So,
but on the flip side, if you wanted to load like that, like let's say we were loading the main question plus the answer separately, you could have C loaders around each area and then have one per, right? And then you'd get the content would pop in if that's what you wanted to have happen. So like, let's say you have a piece where a few things, like let's say you have 3 queries and they're going to load really fast, and you have this place maybe not at the bottom of the screen that's going to take a long time to load. You may wrap the top part in a C loader that uses those 3 and the bottom part in a C loader that is just that one, so that that part isn't accessible until the entire page loads. Now, whether those are the best experiences, you'll have to decide for yourself, but that gives you the flexibility to do the kinds of things that you want to do.
Yeah, that's a great thing to point out. You can have multiple C loaders on this page. Let's also go ahead and tack in the save here. So every time that we save, that loader should kind of show up. Oh, except that I've probably broken this because now we're waiting for save on our initial content. So, okay, this is a great example of where you hit a bug that's maybe not super obvious. It's waiting for a save to complete before it shows content, which we don't want. So actually what we want to do here, I'll show you, is we want to make another C loader, like Grant was kind of just saying. And this actually doesn't need to wrap any content because we just want to show a loading bar. And here we're going to put in the question save. So now when I save, well, the save is really quick. So let's slow down that network again. Here we go. Oh, and it's a bulk save we're doing. You got to make sure if you're doing a bulk save,
you have to call the bulk save. Below, right?
Yep. There we go. So that shows up now. You can see whenever I save, and then whenever I load the page, which I'm not going to do because my internet's now slow, the other one will show up. Okay. What else do we want to do?
Great. I think the other thing that's kind of cool sometimes is when you actually hit the save button shows that the save is happening.
Yeah, we can do that. So whenever you hit this, let's slow our network down again for that. That way we'll actually see it happen. So on top of showing a load up there, whenever you hit this, it'd be nice to maybe disable this and to show it loading. That way people can't just spam it, right. Especially if it's long running. Okay, so best way to do that is Beautify has a disable option and it has a loading option. And I'll show you what that looks like really quickly. So if those are true, then that is what your button's going to look like. Now, let's actually tie those to some changing variables. Okay, so it's very similar to what we're doing up here. It's just going to be question and then the kind of save you're doing. So bulk save, for example. And then bulk save, like Grant was saying, or load or save or whatever when you're doing, has additional properties on it. So you can do dot, and then there's this is loading property. And it's mad because of my other loading thing here. And then we're just going to copy this and also put that, in our loading over here. So disable and loading should be going off of the same bool, right? Because they should trigger at the same time. Now when I hit save, you can see it disables and it shows that loading bar.
And you wouldn't have to show the one at the top if you were doing the save button. I mean, you can do kind of whatever combination of things you'd like to do. You could just have the bar at the top and then disable your save button, or you could have no bar at the top and disable your save button, have a little spinner on it, or you could add a different little save, like you could have a spinner out to the right of the save. Again, these are just regular things right out of the box. Now, one thing to recognize is that up on top, you see where you're using C loader status. That is a Coalesce specific thing. And you know that because of the C dash, right? All the V dash stuff is Beautify standard components. And so in the case of the C loader status, it does some special things. So we don't have to tell it bulk save dot is loading, right? Because it knows how to deal with that internally. And all you have to do is say, hey, here's the method I called. And it figures out, it knows, because it's a Coalesce component, that you should call is loading. And it knows to monitor that particular property. Now down below in the V button, it doesn't know that, right? Because it's not a Coalesce thing. So it doesn't know about bulk save. So we have to just go ahead and hand it the parameter, or hand it the property is loading, and it will go ahead and check that. And because all of the things inside of Coalesce are reactive, you're automatically going to get reactive performance here. So that is loading is automatically going to be wrapped and everything's going to be taken care of.
Yeah. So that's ID loading. I think maybe next episode we should talk about saving, and we did fix our drop down last episode, but let's imagine that somebody is being nefarious and tries to inject.
Wants to cross-link that.
Wants to try
the other thing we have to
that.
talk about is we have that nice little list over there on the left that has 4 things. What if I want another question, or what if I want to get rid of a question, right?
Yeah,
so
that's
a couple things that are going to be in the next few episodes. So stick around, and until then, keep writing some awesome Coalesce apps.
Thanks.